You were never taught how to breathe. And that's not a metaphor. The way you breathe sends a constant signal to your nervous system. And for many people, that signal keeps stress running on autopilot. What this audiobook gives you is not a technique. It gives you clarity. Clarity about why tension stays when life is calm, why sleep doesn't deepen, why the body keeps reacting even when nothing is wrong. And when that confusion ends, the nervous system no longer has to treat its own signals as danger. Most people think stress comes from work, from difficult situations, from worrying too much. But for many people, stress begins with breathing. Long before a problem appears, breathing changes. It becomes faster, shallower, less steady. That change sends a message to the nervous system. Stay alert. Something is wrong. This happens even when life is relatively calm, even when there is no immediate danger, even when the mind cannot find a clear reason. The body reacts first. Thoughts come later. For many people, breathing is the signal that keeps the nervous system locked in stress. Quietly, automatically, day after day. This is why problems often don't disappear when life becomes calmer. The situation improves. Nothing urgent is happening. There is no immediate threat. Yet the body does not settle. The heart starts beating faster for no clear reason. Blood pressure becomes unstable. Sleep turns shallow, broken, restless. Many people lie awake at night feeling tired but unable to rest. Others wake up already tense, with a tight chest and a sense of inner alertness they cannot explain. During the day, the mind feels jumpy. Small things provoke anxiety. The body reacts as if something is about to go wrong. Over time, these sensations become familiar. Rapid heartbeat, constant tension, shallow breathing barely noticed. A nervous system that never fully powers down. This book is about that pattern. About the signals your body keeps sending long before symptoms appear on medical tests. About the gradual loss of internal sensitivity that makes these sensations feel confusing and uncontrollable. About the moment when the body stops recognizing safety. You will learn why breathing plays a central role in all of this, why it affects heart rhythm, sleep quality, emotional stability, and the sense of inner calm. Why restoring awareness of internal signals changes the way these symptoms are experienced. This is not a medical manual. It does not offer quick fixes or breathing routines. It offers clarity. Clarity about why these sensations persist, and why breathing is the missing piece most people were never taught to understand. Important. Medical considerations. As you move forward, remember the important distinction. If you have actual medical conditions, if a doctor has diagnosed disease or dysfunction, then you need medical treatment alongside this understanding. Understanding your nervous system helps, but it does not replace medicine when medicine is needed. If you have not had a medical evaluation, get one. If you have had one and everything came back normal, then this book is for you. If you have been diagnosed with something real, then your work includes both medical treatment and this nervous system understanding. Be clear about what you have. Be honest with yourself. And be willing to get professional help, medical and psychological, when you need it. Chapter 1. The body reacts first. Let me tell you something that will change how you understand absolutely everything that comes next in this book. Your body makes decisions before your mind does, decisions that shape how you feel and what you experience. Years before we had language for this, before neuroscience gave us the words to describe it, people experienced this truth in their own lives. They would feel the fear before they knew what they were afraid of. They would notice the tension building in their chest before the thought appeared in their mind. This is not psychology. This is not metaphor. This is biology, the basic way your nervous system operates. And once you understand this one simple truth, you will stop blaming yourself for the very things your nervous system is designed to do. You will stop fighting your body. You will stop wondering if you are weak or broken or unable to handle basic emotions. Understanding that your body reacts first is where genuine change begins. Think about the last time you felt your heart race without any obvious reason. You were not in danger. Nobody threatened you. Nothing terrible happened at that moment. Yet your chest tightened immediately. Your breathing became shallow and fast, and your mind began searching backwards. What did I do? What is wrong? Trying to find a story that would explain the physical sensation your body was already experiencing. Your mind was playing catch-up, trying to make sense of what was happening. This happens in reverse order from what most people believe. Your mind does not create the sensation and then your body responds to it. Instead, your body creates the sensation first, and then your mind rushes in, trying to explain it. The physical response comes first. The interpretation comes later. And understanding this distinction matters far more than you might realize right now. Here is why this is so crucial for your well-being. If you believe that your thoughts create your anxiety, then you will spend all your time trying to control your thoughts. You will lie awake at night arguing with yourself, telling yourself that nothing bad is going to happen, that you should not be worried, that there is no real reason for this feeling. You will try everything: positive affirmations, logical arguments, reasoning with yourself, and nothing changes. The body keeps doing what it is doing, and you keep feeling more frustrated because the technique that was supposed to work is not working. You become convinced that you are doing something wrong, that your mind is unusually broken, that you lack the willpower to think correctly. But what if the problem was never your thoughts at all? What if you have been trying to solve the wrong problem the entire time? Your nervous system reads signals from your body all the time, constantly and automatically. It is not reading words. It is not reading your interpretations or your beliefs about the situation. It is reading rhythm. It is reading patterns. It is reading the actual physical state of your physiology, moment by moment, breath by breath. And one of the most powerful signals it reads is the signal of your breath. How fast you are breathing, how shallow or deep, how regular or irregular. When your breathing becomes rapid and shallow, your nervous system receives a very clear message from your body. Something is wrong here. Something is happening that requires you to be ready. This is not a metaphor or something you can think your way out of. This is your body sending an actual chemical and neurological signal that travels through your brain and tells your entire system to shift into a state of readiness and protection. What happens next is both remarkable and automatic. You do not have to think about it. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense up, your pupils dilate. Blood flows away from your digestive system and toward your large muscle groups. Your immune system shifts. Your stress hormones spike. Every resource shifts toward defense and protection. This entire cascade is called the stress response, and it is one of the most powerful biological programs your body has. It exists for a very good reason. It kept your ancestors alive. But here is the problem that most people never understand. This program was designed for a very different world than the one you live in today. It was designed for situations where you needed to either fight a physical threat or run away from danger as fast as possible. You see a predator, you need to be ready to respond in seconds. That ancient nervous system kept your ancestors alive for thousands of years. It is still running inside you right now, using the exact same mechanisms. The issue is that in your modern life, the threats are completely different from what this system was designed to handle. They are not tigers or snakes or physical predators. They are work deadlines, social situations, health worries, financial uncertainty, the pressure to be perfect. Many of them are not even external threats. Many of them are internal, existing only in your mind. They are the constant pressure you put on yourself, the expectations you carry, the fear of not being enough or not doing things right. Yet your nervous system does not know the difference between a tiger and a presentation you are worried about. Your body cannot distinguish between real danger and imagined danger. It only knows. There is a signal that says something is wrong, and I need to be ready. Now here is where breathing comes in, and this is the part that changes everything about how you understand your own experience. Your breathing is one of the few physiological systems that can be both automatic and voluntary. You can breathe without thinking about it, but you can also choose to breathe differently. Your heart beats without you thinking about it. Your digestion happens without your conscious control. But your breathing, you can breathe without thinking, yet you can also consciously choose your breath. This makes breathing special. This makes breathing a bridge between your conscious mind and your nervous system, a connection point that matters. And when your nervous system is in a state of readiness or threat, one of the first things that changes is your breath. It becomes faster, more shallow, more irregular. This is not something you decide to do consciously. Your nervous system commands it, and the breath obeys. You do not have to think about it. It just happens automatically, below your awareness. Here is the crucial part that most people miss completely, and it is the key to understanding why your symptoms persist. This shallow, rapid breathing then sends a signal back to the nervous system that says, yes, stay alert. Something is still wrong here. The breath becomes a signal that perpetuates the very state it is responding to. The cycle feeds itself, round and round, automatically, without any conscious decision on your part. Let me give you a concrete example so you can see exactly how this cycle works in everyday life. Imagine you are sitting in your house right now. Everything is fine. Your house is safe. There are no immediate threats around you. But perhaps because of stress at work, or worry about something that happened days ago, or simply because you have been stressed for so long, your breathing has become shallower than it used to be. You are barely noticing it. It has just become your normal baseline. You have adapted to it. Your body is breathing this way automatically, without any conscious decision on your part. This shallow breathing sends a signal to your nervous system. There is something worth being ready for here. Your nervous system receives this message and responds by increasing your heart rate slightly, tensioning your muscles, releasing a small amount of stress hormones into your bloodstream. Your body interprets this as confirmation that something is wrong. If nothing was wrong, why would I be breathing this way? So it tenses your breathing even more. Your breathing becomes even shallower, even faster. And the cycle continues, round and round, automatically and invisibly. You have done nothing wrong. You have not created this consciously. Your mind is not making this up or exaggerating the situation. Your body is simply following a very old, very powerful biological program that has kept humans alive for thousands of years, triggered by a signal it is receiving constantly, the signal of your breath. And because this is happening automatically, beneath your conscious awareness, you do not even realize what is perpetuating the state. You are trapped in the cycle without knowing how you got there. This is why people get so frustrated with the advice that says, just stop worrying or just think positive thoughts. Because even if you manage to shift your thinking, even if you convince yourself that everything is actually fine, if your breathing pattern remains shallow and rapid, your nervous system continues to receive the signal that something is wrong. Your body will continue to respond, and the anxiety will continue to persist. You can win the battle with your thoughts and still lose the war, because the real signal is coming from somewhere else entirely. It is coming from your breath. The thoughts are not the cause. The thoughts are often a consequence. Your mind is doing what minds do. It is creating a story that explains the physical sensations your body is experiencing. The racing heart, the tightness in the chest, the sense of alertness. Your mind looks at these things and tries to make sense of them. And because something must be wrong if your body is reacting this way, your mind generates worry, anticipation of problems, fear. But the root is not in the thinking. The root is in the signal. The root is in the breathing pattern that is constantly telling the nervous system to stay alert. Now, this might sound depressing at first, and I understand that response. If your body is running on automatic, if the signal is constantly sending the message to stay ready, what can you possibly do about it? How do you change something that is happening automatically without your conscious choice? How do you intervene in a process that your mind does not even control? It feels impossible. This is where understanding becomes powerful. This is where things begin to shift. Because here is what happens. As soon as you understand that this is what is going on, something begins to change. You are no longer fighting your body for no reason. You are no longer wondering if you are broken or weak or unable to relax. You are no longer interpreting your body's responses as a sign of personal failure or weakness. You are no longer blaming yourself for the very thing your nervous system is designed to do. Instead, you begin to see what is actually happening in your body and your life. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is responding to the signals it is receiving from your breath. The problem is not that your body is wrong or broken. The problem is that the signal is stuck. The signal is saying stay alert when there is nothing to stay alert for. The signal is running on a pattern from your past that no longer applies to your present reality. This realization, this understanding, is where genuine change begins. Not with forcing your breathing to be different, not with white-knuckling your way to calm, but with seeing clearly enough that you understand why this is happening. And that understanding, by itself, begins to lower the internal threat level. Your body can begin to receive a different message. Think about the last time you were worried about something that turned out to be nothing. The moment you realized it was actually nothing, how did your body respond immediately? Did your muscles gradually relax? Did your breathing deepen? Did your heart rate slow down? Even though nothing external had changed, you were in the same room, the same situation. Something shifted inside you. The threat had been removed, not through force or effort, but through understanding and clarity. This is the power of clarity. This is the beginning of genuine change. This is why the next chapters of this book are not filled with breathing techniques or exercises that promise quick fixes. They are filled with understanding, real, clear, honest understanding of what is actually happening in your nervous system. Because the techniques only work after the nervous system stops treating your own signals as a threat. And that shift happens through clarity, not through force. Your body has not been working against you. Your nervous system has not betrayed you. Your body has been responding to what it believes is an urgent situation based on the signals it is receiving. Your job is not to fight that response or force it to stop. Your job is to understand it clearly enough that the system can begin to recognize that it is safe to settle. That understanding is where the real change begins. Chapter 2. Breathing is a signal, not a technique. There is a fundamental confusion that almost everyone carries around with them, and it shapes everything they believe about breathing and what they try to do about it. Most people think that breathing is something you do, a technique, a tool, a skill that you can control and manipulate to get the result you want. Breathe slowly for calm. Breathe quickly for energy. Hold your breath to focus. We treat breathing like you would treat learning to play an instrument or throw a ball, something external to master. But this is exactly backwards, and it causes more problems than it solves. Breathing is not primarily a technique that you perform. Breathing is a language. It is the way your nervous system speaks to you and to itself. Your nervous system is constantly sending messages to your body, and some of those messages are chemical, some are hormonal, some are neurological. And one of the primary ways those messages are expressed and communicated is through the breath. The breath is not separate from the nervous system. The breath is one of the main ways the nervous system communicates what it believes about your situation and what needs to happen next. When you are calm and safe, your breathing is slow, deep, and regular, a gentle, predictable rhythm. When you are alert and focused, your breathing is faster, shallower, more variable, ready to respond. When you are afraid or in threat, your breathing becomes rapid and sometimes even held, preparing for fight or flight. This is not you deciding to breathe that way. This is not a conscious choice. This is your nervous system literally commanding the breath based on what it perceives about the situation. The nervous system says, "This is what we need," and the breath obeys. And here is something that most people never realize. Your nervous system is not reading your thoughts. It is not reading your interpretations or your logical arguments about the situation. It is reading patterns. It is reading your physiology. It is reading your breath, your heart rate, your muscle tension, the patterns of your nervous system activity. And based on those patterns, it makes decisions about what state you are actually in. Someone can tell you, intellectually, rationally, convincingly, that there is nothing to worry about, that everything will be fine, that you are safe. Your mind might understand the logical argument perfectly, but your nervous system is reading a different signal. It is reading the pattern of your breathing. It is reading the tension in your body. And it is saying, "No, something is wrong. Stay alert." This is why affirmations often fail to help people. This is why positive self-talk, while potentially helpful for some things, does not resolve chronic anxiety and stress. Your nervous system is not fooled by words. It is not persuaded by logical arguments. It is reading the physical pattern. It is reading what your body is doing. And if the physical pattern says something is wrong, then the nervous system will continue to interpret that as true, regardless of what your mind is trying to tell it. The nervous system trusts the body more than it trusts the thinking mind. But here is something crucial that people often get completely wrong. The goal is not to force your breathing to be different. The goal is not to white-knuckle your way to slow, deep breathing and thereby trick your nervous system into thinking you are calm when you are not. In fact, trying to control your breathing often has the opposite effect from what people expect. When you start focusing intently on your breathing, trying to make it slower or deeper or more controlled, your nervous system often interprets this as a sign of threat. Why would you be monitoring your breathing so closely if something was not wrong? Why would you be trying to control your body if it was safe to relax? The nervous system notices the effort and the focus, and it responds accordingly. Many people have experienced exactly this. They try breathing exercises and find that their anxiety actually increases instead of decreasing. Their heart races more. Their breathing becomes more erratic. They feel more trapped, not less. They feel worse, not better. The techniques that were supposed to help are actually making everything more intense. This is not failure. This is not because they are doing something wrong or because they are broken. This is exactly what happens when you try to force a signal to change without understanding what the signal actually means. The attempt to control the breathing, which seems like it should be helpful, is actually deepening the sense of threat to the nervous system. The nervous system is reading the controlled breathing not as a sign of safety, but as a sign that you do not trust your own physiology. That something is so wrong that it requires conscious control. That you are afraid of your own body and its responses. The nervous system interprets your effort to control as evidence that danger is real. This is the subtle but absolutely critical difference that most people miss. Breathing is a signal of what your nervous system believes about the situation. When you try to force the signal to be different, without addressing what the nervous system actually believes, you are just adding another layer of conflict and struggle. You are creating a battle inside yourself. One part of you trying to force change, and another part detecting that as threat. Think about it this way. Imagine you had a smoke detector in your house, and it keeps going off even though there is no fire. The alarm is beeping constantly. The alarm is triggering. You hear the sound all the time. You might try to muffle the sound, to ignore it, to cover it up. You might try to disable it. But the detector is still sensing something. And as long as it is sensing what it is sensing, it will continue to alarm. You have not solved the actual problem. You have just tried to hide the problem from yourself. Now imagine two very different approaches to this situation. The first approach, you could bring someone in to manually silence the detector. You could disable it somehow. The beeping would stop, the alarm would cease. But the problem is not actually solved. The detector is still sensing what it is sensing. You have just stopped yourself from hearing it. The threat message is still there, you just cannot hear it anymore. The second approach, you could figure out why the detector is going off in the first place. Is there actually smoke? Is it dust in the sensor? Is it malfunctioning? Is it too sensitive? Once you understand what the actual signal is, you can address it. And once the signal changes, the detector naturally stops alarming. You have solved the actual problem. Your nervous system is exactly like that detector. Your breathing is the alarm. Most people unconsciously try the first approach. They try to silence the alarm, to control the breathing, to force it into a different pattern. But as long as the nervous system is still reading the signal that says something is wrong, the alarm will keep triggering. The breathing will remain shallow and fast. The anxiety will persist. The more powerful approach is the second one. Understand why the signal is stuck. Understand what the nervous system is responding to. Understand why it believes that staying alert is necessary. And then, as your understanding changes, as the nervous system receives new information, the signal naturally begins to shift. Here is something important that I want you to really consider deeply. Your nervous system is not stupid. It is not broken. It is not malfunctioning or defective. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is reading patterns. It is detecting threat. It is preparing you to respond. These are functions that have kept human beings alive for thousands of years. Your nervous system is brilliant at what it does. The problem is not that your nervous system is wrong. The problem is that it is operating based on patterns that were learned a long time ago. In a different time, in a different context, in response to threats that may have been real then but are not present now. It has continued to operate from those patterns, even though the original situation that triggered the pattern has long since changed. The nervous system is loyal to its learning. It does not update easily. It is conservative. It is biased toward caution. But here is the beautiful part. The nervous system does not change its patterns because you force it or because you white-knuckle your way to change. It changes because new information comes in. It learns new patterns. It gradually, through repeated experience, begins to understand that the world is actually safer than it thought. And one of the most powerful ways to send that new information is through understanding. When you understand why your nervous system is responding the way it is, you are no longer in conflict with it. You are no longer fighting against your own physiology. You are observing it with clarity and compassion. And that shift in your relationship to your body, from fighting to observing, from forcing to understanding, is where genuine change begins. This is why breathing exercises alone often fail to help people with persistent anxiety. It is not because breathing is not important. It is absolutely important. It is because changing the breathing pattern without changing the underlying understanding is like turning off the alarm without addressing why it is going off. The alarm will start again. The old pattern will return. But here is the really important part. Breathing is also the most accessible signal. It is not hidden inside your brain where you cannot see it. You do not need equipment or a specialist or years of training to observe your breathing. You can observe your breathing right now, this very moment, without doing anything special or forcing anything. Your breathing is already telling you something about what your nervous system believes. And by learning to read that signal clearly, without judgment, without trying to change it, you begin to understand what your nervous system is trying to communicate. When you notice that your breathing has become shallow, not to fix it, but just to notice it, you are receiving information. Your nervous system is saying something to you. It is saying something about your environment, or your thoughts, or your body state, or some combination of all of these things. That signal is valuable. It is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something that proves you are broken. It is information. It is your nervous system communicating with you. And as you learn to read that information, as you understand what your nervous system is communicating through your breath, something begins to shift inside you. You are no longer at war with your body. You are no longer fighting against your own physiology and your own nature. You are in dialogue with it. You are listening. You are beginning to understand. And the moment the nervous system feels like it is being listened to, the moment it feels understood by your own conscious mind, is the moment it can begin to trust. And that trust, that sense of being understood by your own body, is where true, lasting change begins. Chapter 3. Why symptoms persist without a cause. One of the most frustrating experiences someone can have is this. The situation that originally triggered the anxiety has completely resolved, but the symptoms continue. The crisis is over. The difficult relationship has ended. The stressful job is gone. The financial emergency has been handled. The deadline has passed. And yet the heart still races. The chest still tightens. Sleep is still broken and restless. The sense of inner alertness never fully fades. You find yourself waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for something bad to happen, even though, logically, you know the threat has passed. You might even have gone to doctors about this. You might have gotten tests done, blood work, heart scans, everything modern medicine can offer. Everything comes back normal. Blood pressure is fine, heart rhythm is normal. There is nothing physically wrong according to the tests. And yet the symptoms persist. This is confusing. This is frustrating. It feels like there must be something hidden, something the tests are not catching, something that is just waiting to become a real problem. It feels like your body is lying, or the doctors are missing something crucial. But what if the issue is not that something is hidden? What if the issue is that your nervous system has learned a pattern, and now that pattern is continuing on its own, even though the original reason for it is gone? What if the symptoms persist not because there is danger, but because the signal of danger is stuck? Let me explain how this works. Your nervous system is essentially a learning system. It learns patterns through experience. It learns what is safe and what is not safe. It learns what requires alertness and what allows relaxation. These patterns are built through repetition and through the intensity of the experience. The stronger the experience, the faster the learning. The longer the experience lasts, the more deeply the pattern becomes embedded. Imagine someone who has been through a period of significant stress. Maybe it lasted for weeks. Maybe it lasted for months. Maybe it lasted for years. During that entire time, their nervous system was in a state of readiness almost constantly. The breath was shallow, the heart was racing, the muscles were tense. The system was on high alert. The nervous system's job is to prepare the body to respond to this ongoing threat. And it does that brilliantly. It shifts into a protective mode. It heightens sensitivity. It becomes quick to respond. This is a healthy adaptation to an ongoing threat. This is what the nervous system is supposed to do. But then the situation resolves. The stressor is gone. The reason for the alertness no longer exists. The threat has been removed. And here is where the problem emerges. The nervous system does not immediately switch off like a light. The pattern that was learned over weeks or months does not disappear instantly. The nervous system does not think to itself, well, that situation is over, so I will return to my baseline now. That is not how it works. In fact, your nervous system is deeply conservative. It is biased toward caution. It is biased toward staying safe. It thinks, okay, the obvious danger has passed. But maybe it is not really gone. Maybe it is just hiding. Maybe it is just waiting for the right moment to return. Maybe I need to stay alert a little longer, just to be safe. Better to be too alert than to be caught off guard. Better to overreact than to miss a real threat. So the nervous system maintains the pattern. It keeps the breathing shallow. It keeps the heart rate elevated. It keeps the muscles slightly tense. And it continues scanning for danger. Because the original stressor is gone, you start to look for a new explanation. Why am I still like this? What is wrong with me? What crisis am I not seeing? What hidden threat is my body detecting that I cannot see? And when you look for a problem, your mind is remarkably good at finding one. You start to notice every unusual sensation. That twinge in your chest. Is that my heart? That moment of dizziness? Am I about to faint? That slight irregularity in your breathing? Am I doing something wrong? That fatigue? Am I getting sick? Suddenly, your body becomes the problem. Your nervous system becomes the threat. Your own internal sensations become something to be afraid of. This is a critical shift, and this is exactly where symptoms often become chronic. Because now the nervous system is not just responding to external stress. It is responding to internal threat. It is reading your own symptoms as a sign that something is dangerously wrong. The original stressor might be gone, but now you have created a new stressor, the fear of your own body. Let me give you a more concrete example so you can see exactly how this works. Someone has been through an incredibly high-stress period in their career. For 3 years, they worked under intense pressure. Their nervous system was constantly mobilized. They were sleeping poorly. Their heart was racing regularly. Their breathing was shallow most of the time. This became their baseline. This was what normal felt like to them. But then, finally, they made a change. They left that job. They took some time off. The external stressor was gone. Logically, they should have felt relieved. They should have felt relaxed. But instead, they felt more anxious than ever. The constant activity that had occupied their mind was gone, and now they were alone with their own physiology. And their physiology did not know what to do with this sudden lack of demand. When they tried to sit still, they felt panicky. When they tried to rest, they felt like something was wrong. When they finally had time to relax, relaxation felt terrifying. Their body had become so accustomed to being in a state of emergency that actual calm felt dangerous and wrong. What was happening is this. Their nervous system had learned over 3 years that alertness was safety. Alertness meant they were prepared. Alertness meant they were handling the demands. Alertness was the state in which they were performing and surviving. And relaxation, by contrast, felt like dropping their guard. Relaxation felt vulnerable. Relaxation felt like something bad could happen if they were not on alert. This adaptation happens gradually, so gradually that most people do not even notice it. You are so focused on managing the current crisis, solving the current problem, handling the current demands, that you do not notice your baseline has shifted. You do not notice that the state which your nervous system now considers normal is actually quite elevated. You do not notice that you have become numb to constant tension. You have adapted to it. It has become your normal. But then something shifts. The pressure eases. The crisis passes. The job ends. The relationship resolves. And suddenly, the constant background tension that you had that almost stopped noticing becomes very noticeable again. Not because it increased, but because the context changed. And when you try to let it go, when you try to relax into the relief, your nervous system resists. It is not ready. It does not trust that the threat is actually gone. This is particularly difficult because it creates a terrible bind. On one level, you know that you should be able to relax. The external situation has changed. The threat has passed. Logically, it makes sense that you should be able to settle and feel calm. But your nervous system is not operating on logic. It is operating on pattern. And the pattern says, stay alert, because that is the mode that kept you safe before. And then you start to interpret this continued alertness as proof that something is still wrong. You think, if I could truly relax, I would. The fact that I cannot relax means there is still a threat somewhere. It means I am broken. It means I am defective. And this interpretation, this belief, only deepens the alertness. It only strengthens the pattern. Here is what I want you to really understand. If symptoms persist without an obvious cause, if relaxation feels impossible, if your body remains tense even when there is no external threat, that is not a sign of weakness or defectiveness. That is not proof that you are broken or that something is hidden inside you. That is a sign that your nervous system has adapted to a different baseline. It is a sign that your nervous system has learned a protective pattern, and that pattern is now persisting even though there is no longer a threat to protect against. It is not that you do not know how to relax. It is that your nervous system has genuinely forgotten what relaxation feels like as a safe state. Your nervous system has learned a new definition of safety, and that definition includes constant readiness. Your baseline has shifted. Your nervous system's calibration has changed. This is actually important information because it tells you something crucial. Your nervous system is not broken. It is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It learned that alertness was the state that kept you safe, and it maintained that state. That is a healthy adaptation to an ongoing threat. The problem is not that your nervous system is defective. The problem is that the ongoing threat is over, but your nervous system does not know that yet. The symptoms that persist, the racing heart, the shallow breathing, the sense of internal alertness, the poor sleep, the constant tension. These are not signs of hidden disease. These are not warnings of future problems. These are signs that your nervous system has learned a pattern, that is all. And if a pattern can be learned, it can be understood. And if it can be understood, it can begin to shift. But here is what does not work. Trying to force yourself to relax. Trying to white-knuckle your way into calmness. Trying to prove to yourself that you can relax, even though relaxation feels wrong. These approaches just add another layer of internal conflict. You are essentially trying to fight your nervous system into submission, and the nervous system will always win that fight. It has more power. It has more primitive authority. It has more biological weight than your conscious will does. What actually works is understanding. It is seeing clearly that your nervous system has adapted to alertness. It is recognizing that this adaptation was reasonable given what you were going through. It is accepting that your baseline has shifted, and that it will take time and gentle consistency for your nervous system to learn a new baseline. Understanding creates the foundation. Clarity creates the possibility for change. Chapter 4. When the nervous system stops recognizing safety. There is a state that many people reach after months or years of chronic stress, and it is one of the most subtle and invisible of all the things that can happen to the nervous system. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not something that shows up on medical tests. It is the quiet state of becoming so familiar with alertness that you actually forget what genuine relaxation feels like. You forget what safety feels like in your own body. Your nervous system has recalibrated around a new baseline, one that is elevated, tense, and constantly ready. Your nervous system has a baseline, a state that it considers normal and that it continuously tries to maintain. This is the state your body thinks is the default, the resting point, the place you return to when nothing else is demanding your attention. And here is what happens. If you spend enough time in a state of elevated alertness, if you stay in that state for weeks or months or years, that alertness actually becomes your baseline. It becomes what your nervous system considers normal. It becomes what feels right to your body. Your nervous system recalibrates. It adjusts its entire set point around this new state of readiness. When you have been on high alert for that long, your nervous system does not remember that there was ever a time when you were not like this. Or rather, it remembers intellectually, but not physiologically. Your body has adapted to this state completely. Your nervous system has built its entire understanding of normal around alertness and readiness. The old baseline, the one where you were calm and relaxed, has faded from your nervous system's memory. It no longer knows what that felt like on a cellular level. This has a profound consequence that most people never understand. When something genuinely calm and safe begins to happen, when the conditions for relaxation finally arrive, when the external pressure finally eases, your nervous system often does not recognize it as safe. Instead, it interprets the calmness as wrong. It interprets relaxation as suspicious. It thinks, why am I not on alert? What am I missing? Something must be wrong, if I am able to relax right now? The absence of threat does not feel safe. It feels dangerous and unfamiliar. This is why so many people find that when they finally get a vacation, when they finally have time off, when the external conditions finally allow for relaxation, they cannot do it. They lie on a beach, and instead of feeling peaceful, they feel anxious. They go on holiday, and they are more tense than when they were working. They finally get a quiet weekend, and they cannot settle. They try to rest, and they feel like something is about to go wrong. The very thing that should feel like relief feels like a threat. The nervous system resists the safety. This is not laziness. This is not the inability to relax. This is not a personal failing or a character flaw. This is a nervous system that has forgotten what safety feels like. This is a system that has become so adapted to alertness that calmness itself is being interpreted as a threat. The nervous system has lost its ability to recognize safety when it is actually present. Consider someone who has been through an incredibly high-stress period in their career. For 3 years, they worked under intense pressure. Their nervous system was constantly mobilized. They were sleeping poorly, their heart was racing, their breathing was shallow most of the time. This was their baseline. Their nervous system had recalibrated around this state. This was what normal felt like to their body. The constant state of readiness had become their default, their resting point. Then, finally, they made a change. They left that job. They took some time off. The external stressor was gone. Logically, they should have felt relieved. They should have felt grateful for the freedom. But instead, they felt more anxious than ever. When they tried to sit still, they felt panicky. When they tried to relax, they felt like something was wrong. Their body had become so accustomed to being in a state of emergency that actual calm felt terrifying. The absence of demands felt dangerous. What was happening is this. Their nervous system had learned, over 3 years, that alertness was safety. Alertness meant they were prepared. Alertness meant they were handling the demands. Alertness was the state in which they were performing and surviving. And relaxation, by contrast, felt like dropping their guard. Relaxation felt vulnerable. Relaxation felt like something bad could happen if they were not on alert. The nervous system was literally afraid of relaxation because it had learned that alertness was what kept them functioning. This adaptation happens gradually, so gradually that most people do not even notice it happening. You are so focused on managing the current crisis that you do not notice your baseline has shifted. You do not notice that the state which your nervous system now considers normal is actually quite elevated. You do not notice that you have become numb to constant tension. You have simply adapted to it. It has become your default. It has become invisible to you. But the problem is that when you finally have a chance to relax, when the external pressure finally eases, when the demand finally stops, your nervous system does not know what to do. It has forgotten what relaxation feels like. It no longer trusts that relaxation is safe. And when your nervous system does not trust something, it protects you from it. It sends signals that say, "This is wrong. Be careful, something is not right here." The nervous system becomes hypervigilant about the very thing that should feel good. It resists rest. Here is what I want you to really understand. If relaxation feels strange to you, if it feels uncomfortable or even slightly threatening, that is not a sign of weakness or defectiveness. That is not proof that something is wrong with you. That is a sign that your nervous system has adapted to a different baseline. It is not that you do not know how to relax. It is that your nervous system has genuinely forgotten what relaxation feels like as a safe state. The memory of safety has faded. This is actually important information. because it tells you something crucial. Your nervous system is not broken. It is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It learned that alertness was the state that kept you safe and functional, and it maintained that state. That is a healthy adaptation to an ongoing threat. The problem is not that your nervous system is defective. The problem is that the situation has changed. But your nervous system has not received the message yet. Now, here is what does not work. Trying to force yourself to relax. Trying to white-knuckle your way into calmness. Trying to prove to yourself that you can relax, even though relaxation feels wrong and uncomfortable and suspicious. These approaches just add another layer of internal conflict and struggle. You are essentially trying to fight your nervous system into submission, and the nervous system will always win that fight. It has more power. It has more primitive authority. It has more biological weight than your conscious will does. What actually works is understanding. It is seeing clearly that your nervous system has adapted to alertness. It is recognizing that this adaptation was reasonable and healthy, given what you were going through. It is accepting that your baseline has shifted, and that it will take time, real time, not days, but weeks or months, for your nervous system to learn a new baseline. Understanding creates the foundation. Clarity creates the possibility for change. The shift does not happen through force or effort. It happens through safety. It happens when your nervous system gradually begins to receive consistent signals that the world is actually safe, that there is no ongoing threat, that it is okay to ease up on the constant vigilance, that nothing bad happens when you are not on alert. These signals are subtle, but they are powerful. They come from experiences of safety. They come from consistent circumstances where nothing bad happens, where the feared consequence never materializes, where the threat never arrives. Over time, repeated experiences of safety gradually shift the baseline. The nervous system slowly learns that it does not need to be on such high alert. The set point begins to move. The baseline begins to shift. But this learning happens much more slowly than the learning that happens during a crisis. When you are in an acute threat, your nervous system learns very quickly. It takes only a few experiences to establish a pattern. But unlearning that pattern, learning a new baseline of safety, takes longer. It requires consistency. It requires time. And it requires patience with yourself as the process unfolds. Chapter 5. Interoception. Losing and restoring internal awareness. There's a word that most people have never heard of, but it describes something that happens to almost everyone who has been through a period of significant stress. The word is interoception. It refers to your ability to sense what is happening inside your body, to feel your own internal states accurately and with clarity. It is your internal awareness system, your built-in sensory mechanism for understanding what is happening beneath your skin. And when you have been chronically stressed, when your nervous system has been in a state of high alert for months or years, this internal sensing system often becomes dulled, distorted, or confused. Most of your awareness of the world comes through your external senses. You see things. You hear sounds. You feel things touching your skin. You taste and smell. These external senses are what you think of when you think of sensing the world. They are obvious and constant. But there is another whole system of sensing that happens entirely internally, beneath your conscious awareness most of the time. You sense your heartbeat. You sense your breathing. You sense the tension in your muscles. You sense sensations in your gut. You sense the temperature of your body. You sense the position of your limbs in space. You sense emotions as physical sensations in your chest and belly. This internal sensing system is called interoception, and it is absolutely crucial for your well-being. Your interoceptive system is what allows you to know when you are hungry, when you are tired, when you need to rest, when you are getting sick. It is what allows you to feel emotions as physical sensations. The tightness in your chest when you are sad, the butterflies in your stomach when you are nervous, the lightness in your step when you are happy. It is what allows you to sense your own body's needs and respond to them. Interoception is the foundation of being able to take care of yourself. And here is what is fascinating. When your nervous system is in a chronic state of stress, when you have been living in a state of high alert for a long time, your interoceptive awareness often becomes dampened or distorted. You stop feeling things clearly. You lose the nuance of your internal experience. You might know that something is wrong, but you lose the ability to sense exactly what it is. You lose contact with the subtle signals your body is constantly sending. This can show up in many different ways, and the patterns vary from person to person. Some people say they feel numb. They cannot feel their emotions as clearly as they used to. They go through the day on autopilot, barely aware of what is happening inside them. Other people say they feel a constant low-level discomfort, but cannot identify what it is. They do not know if they are hungry, or tired, or tense, or anxious, or some combination of all of these things at once. Still others become hyper-focused on certain symptoms, obsessing over a particular sensation while remaining completely unaware of many other signals their body is sending. They lose the ability to feel the whole picture. Why does this happen? The answer is actually protective. When your nervous system is under chronic stress, it prioritizes survival. It prioritizes responding to immediate threats. It narrows your awareness down to the most pressing concerns. It sharpens your focus on danger and threat, and in doing so, it dampens the awareness of more subtle internal signals. When you are constantly under threat, you cannot afford to be distracted by subtle internal sensations. You cannot afford to notice all the little discomforts and sensations that are always happening inside your body. Those signals would be too much information, and they would slow down your response time. So your nervous system essentially turns down the volume on the less critical internal signals. It narrows your awareness. It sharpens your focus on the most important things, the signs of threat, the signals of danger. This is a healthy adaptation in the short term. It allows you to survive immediate threats. But when this state becomes chronic, when the narrowed awareness becomes your baseline, when you stay in this state for months or years, it creates problems. You lose the ability to sense what you need. You might not notice that you are exhausted until you collapse. You might not sense that you are hungry until you become irritable and cannot think clearly. You might not feel that you are emotionally overwhelmed until you suddenly cry without warning. You might not sense that your body is tense until the tension becomes painful. Your internal signals become muted, and you lose the information those signals are meant to provide. Your body is speaking, but you have stopped listening. Moreover, this loss of interoceptive awareness actually perpetuates the stress and anxiety. Because when you cannot sense your internal state clearly, you cannot respond to it effectively. If you cannot feel that you are anxious until it becomes severe, you cannot address it early. If you cannot sense that you are tense until the tension becomes painful, you cannot ease it gradually. Your only option is to wait until the signal becomes so loud that you cannot ignore it. And then you have to respond to a full-blown problem rather than addressing it early. The problem grows larger because you did not sense it when it was small. Additionally, when you cannot sense your internal state clearly, the same thing happens with your breathing. You lose awareness of your breathing pattern. You stop noticing that it has become shallow. You stop sensing the connection between your breathing and your emotional state. You stop noticing the signs that your nervous system is shifting into a state of threat. And without that awareness, you cannot recognize the very signal system that could help you understand what your nervous system is trying to communicate. Here is something important. This loss of internal awareness is not permanent. Your interoceptive system is not broken. It is just dampened. It has been turned down, like the volume on a radio, but the signal is still there. And there is something beautiful about this. The practice of gently restoring awareness is actually quite simple. It does not require any special techniques or expensive tools. It does not require years of training. It just requires attention. It requires turning your awareness inward and paying attention to what is already there. The process of restoring interoceptive awareness begins with noticing without judgment. Not trying to change anything, not trying to control anything, just beginning to pay attention to what is already happening. Where in your body do you feel your breath? Can you sense your heartbeat? Where do you feel tension right now? What is happening in your stomach? What is the temperature of your hands? These are not trick questions. You are not trying to have a particular experience. You are just noticing what is already there. You are tuning in to the signals that are already being sent. And here is what happens. As you begin to pay attention, as you begin to restore awareness of what is happening inside you, something starts to shift. First, you start to get information again. You start to notice that your breathing has become shallow, or fast, or held. You start to sense where you are carrying tension in your body. You start to feel the subtle shifts that happen in your body throughout the day. You start to notice the early signs that your nervous system is shifting into a state of alert before it becomes overwhelming. And this information, this re-established contact with your internal world, is incredibly valuable. It is the beginning of being able to respond to your own needs. Second, something more subtle begins to happen. Your nervous system starts to interpret the act of paying gentle attention to your internal state as a signal of safety. When you are paying attention to your internal world in a calm, curious way, not trying to change anything, not panicking about what you find, you are sending a signal that says, I am safe enough to notice what is happening inside me. I am safe enough to turn my awareness inward. I am safe enough to not be hyper-focused on external threat. I am safe enough to feel my own body. Your nervous system responds to that signal. It begins to relax slightly. It begins to allow more nuanced awareness to come online. It begins to trust that it is actually okay to sense what is happening, because nothing dangerous has happened when it is paying attention to internal sensations. This is actually how genuine healing begins. Not with techniques, not with exercises, but with the simple practice of paying attention. With the practice of noticing your breath without trying to change it. With the practice of sensing what is happening in your body without judgment. With the practice of turning toward your own experience instead of away from it. But here is what is important. This practice needs to be genuinely gentle. If you start paying attention to your internal state while still in a state of high anxiety, while still expecting to find something wrong, while still believing your body is dangerous, the exercise can backfire. You can start noticing sensations and immediately interpreting them as signs of danger. You can start obsessing over symptoms. You can turn the practice of attention into a practice of self-surveillance and fear. You can make things worse instead of better. This is why understanding comes first. This is why the chapters before this one have been focused on helping you understand what is actually happening, rather than jumping straight to techniques. Because if you try to restore interoceptive awareness while still believing that your symptoms are signs of disease, while still searching for the hidden problem, while still afraid of your own body, the practice becomes another form of anxiety. The practice becomes obsessive. It becomes harmful. But when you understand that your symptoms are signs of an old nervous system pattern, when you understand that your body is not broken or dangerous, when you understand that the sensations you are feeling are not warnings of hidden disease, but signals of adaptation, then the practice of gently paying attention becomes something different. It becomes a form of reconnection. It becomes a form of communication with your nervous system. It becomes a practice of saying, I am here, I am paying attention, and I understand that you are trying to protect me even though the threat is over. I am listening. When you approach your internal experience from this place of understanding, something shifts. The practice of interoception changes from being self-surveillance and anxiety to being a practice of gentle awareness and reconnection. And from there, genuine healing can unfold. Your body can begin to trust that you are listening, and your nervous system can begin to recognize that you understand. Chapter 6. Why control makes everything worse. Here is a paradox that many people face, and it is one of the most frustrating experiences they encounter on their journey. The more you try to fix your anxiety, the worse it becomes. The more you try to control your symptoms, the more persistent they become. You try breathing exercises, and somehow your anxiety actually increases. You try to calm yourself down, and the act of trying just makes you more tense. You monitor your heart rate to make sure it is okay, and the monitoring makes it race faster. You research your symptoms online, and the research makes you more afraid. The very attempt to take control often deepens the problem instead of solving it. This seems backwards. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like if something is wrong, you should try to fix it, right? If your breathing is too fast, slow it down. If your heart is racing, make it calm down. If your body is anxious, control it into relaxation. This is the logic of trying to control your way out of the problem. This is what makes sense on the surface. But this logic does not account for how your nervous system actually works. And when you try to apply this logic to an already stressed nervous system, you often end up strengthening the very pattern you are trying to escape. Here is why. When you begin to actively try to control your breathing, when you start monitoring your heart rate, when you begin checking your symptoms to make sure nothing is wrong, when you start researching what could be causing this, your nervous system receives a very specific message. That message is, something is wrong enough that you need to consciously control your physiology. Something is wrong enough that you need to be hypervigilant and monitoring. Something is wrong that requires active intervention and constant attention. The nervous system interprets this conscious attempt at control as a sign of threat. Your nervous system thinks, if everything was actually okay, why would you be trying to control your body? Why would you be monitoring your heart if there was no reason to be concerned? Why would you be researching symptoms if there was no real danger? The nervous system reads your attempt to control as confirmation that something is genuinely wrong. And the more actively you try to control, the more convinced the nervous system becomes that there is something to be afraid of. So what happens? The nervous system increases its alertness. It increases the very symptoms you are trying to control. Your heart races faster because your nervous system is now even more convinced that something is wrong. Your breathing becomes more shallow because your nervous system is preparing for threat. Your anxiety spikes because your nervous system is responding to the signal that you yourself are sending by your attempt to control. You have accidentally told your nervous system, "There is danger here. Be more alert." This is actually a very common pattern, and it traps people in a cycle of suffering. Someone has anxiety. They learn about a breathing technique that is supposed to help. They try the technique, and suddenly their anxiety gets much worse. They interpret this as evidence that they are broken, or that the technique does not work, or that they are doing it wrong. But actually what happened is that the technique itself sent the wrong signal to the nervous system. The nervous system interpreted the attempt to control the breath as a sign of emergency. Let me give you a concrete example so you can see exactly how this works. Someone is lying in bed, and they notice their heart racing. Instead of just noticing it and allowing it, they become afraid of it. They think, "My heart should not be racing right now. I am just lying in bed. Something must be wrong." So they decide to actively control their breathing to calm themselves down. They start consciously slowing their breath. They start focusing intently on their heart rate, monitoring it, checking if it is getting slower. They are trying to take control of the situation. But what they have just done is tell their nervous system, "I am afraid enough of what is happening that I need to take conscious control. I am monitoring closely enough that I am scared something bad might happen." The nervous system, receiving this signal, becomes even more afraid. The heart races faster, and now the person is in a cycle where the more they try to control, the more the symptoms escalate. They are practicing anxiety several times a day and wondering why their anxiety is not improving. The key insight here is this: control and threat are connected in the nervous system. When you sense that you need to consciously control something that normally happens automatically, your nervous system interprets that as a sign of danger. Normal, healthy breathing happens automatically without you thinking about it. If you suddenly need to consciously control it, something must be wrong. Normal, healthy heart function happens automatically. If you are suddenly monitoring it constantly, something must be wrong. Your nervous system notices the effort and the vigilance, and it responds by becoming more protective, more defensive, more alert. This is why people with anxiety disorders often become hyper-focused on their symptoms. The hyper-focus seems like it should help. If I just monitor closely enough, I can catch any problems before they become serious. But actually, the hyper-focus is telling the nervous system that there is something dangerous to watch out for. It is telling the nervous system that the threat is real and present and worth paying attention to. And the nervous system responds by becoming more anxious, more protective, more vigilant. Now, this does not mean you should never try to change anything. It does not mean you should just give up and accept anxiety forever. But it does mean that the path to change does not go through force. It does not go through trying to control your way into calm. It does not go through monitoring and vigilance and effort. It goes through something completely different. The path goes through understanding, through acceptance, through a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own experience. Instead of trying to control your symptoms, the goal becomes understanding why your symptoms are there. Instead of fighting against your anxiety, the goal becomes curious observation. Instead of trying to make your heart rate go down, the goal becomes recognizing what your heart rate is communicating. Instead of monitoring your breathing, the goal becomes noticing your breathing with gentle attention. This requires a very different relationship to your body. It requires moving from a stance of control and fight to a stance of curiosity and acceptance. Instead of trying to force your breathing to be different, you observe the breathing you have with genuine interest and without judgment. You do not judge it. You do not try to change it. You just notice it. You acknowledge it. You listen to what it is communicating. You accept that this is what your nervous system is doing right now. And something remarkable happens when you do this. Your nervous system relaxes. Not because you have forced it to relax, but because you have stopped sending the signal that something is dangerously wrong. You have stopped the constant vigilance. You have stopped the hyper-focus on symptoms. You have stopped the attempt to control. And your nervous system, no longer getting the signal that threat is imminent, begins to ease. This is not something that happens instantly. It is not a technique that works in 5 minutes. It is not a magic solution that eliminates anxiety immediately. But it is something that, done consistently, begins to shift the whole pattern, because instead of reinforcing anxiety through control, you are beginning to send a different signal. A signal that says, I notice what is happening. I am not fighting it. And I trust that my nervous system knows what it is doing, even if I do not completely understand it yet. I am listening instead of controlling. Important note: when to seek medical care. Before we move to the final chapter, I want to be very clear about something that matters deeply. Everything in this book is about understanding how your nervous system responds to signals, particularly when those signals are stuck in old patterns of protection. But this understanding does not replace medical care, and it is not a substitute for seeing a doctor. If you experience chest pain, difficulty breathing, sudden heart palpitations, persistent weakness, vision changes, or any symptom that feels severe or genuinely different from what you usually experience, you need to see a doctor. Not to reassure yourself, but to actually rule out medical conditions that require real treatment. If something feels medically urgent, seek medical attention. Do not try to understand your way through a heart attack. This book is specifically for people whose symptoms persist even after medical evaluation comes back normal. It is for people whose anxiety and physical symptoms are very real and very distressing. But the tests show nothing wrong. It is for understanding why your body continues to send these signals of alarm even when no disease is actually present. It is for the pattern, not for the pathology. If you have not had a medical evaluation, get one. If a doctor has identified a real condition, heart disease, thyroid disorder, autoimmune condition, neurological condition, or anything else, then your work is different. You need treatment for that condition. Understanding your nervous system helps alongside medical treatment, but it does not replace medicine. Treatment and understanding work together. The distinction is crucial and worth repeating. If the problem is in your physiology, if there is actual disease or dysfunction, you need a doctor. If the problem is in how your nervous system interprets signals from an otherwise healthy body, if the tests come back normal but your symptoms remain, then understanding and patience become the primary path forward. Keep this distinction clear as you read the final chapter. Chapter 7. What actually creates change? If control does not work, and if forcing change does not work, and if breathing exercises alone are not the solution, then what actually does create change? This is the question that brings many people to the edge of hope and despair, because they have tried so many things. They have read books. They have tried techniques. They have done breathing exercises. They have downloaded apps. They have listened to guided meditations. And nothing seems to work. Nothing seems to stick. And they wonder if change is actually possible for them. The answer might surprise you, because it is not another technique, and it is not something you do in the traditional sense. It is something that happens when you stop trying so hard. It is something that emerges when you shift your entire approach from doing to understanding. Change begins with understanding. Real, genuine, deep understanding. Not intellectual understanding alone, though that is part of it, but understanding that goes deeper than words. Understanding that becomes part of how you experience your own body. Understanding that shifts something fundamental in how your nervous system interprets your own signals. Here is what I mean. When you truly understand that your symptoms are not a sign of disease, but a sign of an old nervous system pattern, something shifts. Not just in your thinking, but in your entire experience. Not in your thinking mind, but in your nervous system itself. The racing heart is no longer scary. It is no longer a sign that something is wrong with your health. It is no longer a warning of impending disaster. It becomes information. It becomes a signal that your nervous system is operating in protection mode based on old learning. And when a signal is no longer frightening, when a signal is no longer interpreted as danger, the nervous system can begin to relax around it. Let me be very clear about what this does not mean. You are not using positive thinking to trick yourself into not being anxious. You are not telling yourself everything is okay when part of you does not believe it. You are not denying what you are experiencing. You are developing a fundamentally different understanding of what is actually happening. You are seeing the pattern clearly enough that your nervous system no longer needs to treat your own signals as threats. You are no longer afraid of your own body. This understanding creates what we might call a reduction in internal threat. When your nervous system is not treating your own symptoms as signs of danger, when it is not constantly bracing for disaster, when it is not interpreting every sensation as a potential problem, the whole system can begin to settle. The alarm begins to quiet, not because you have forced it to be quiet, but because you have removed the perception of threat. Think about the difference between two scenarios. In the first, someone feels their heart racing and immediately becomes afraid. They think, something is wrong with my heart. I am going to have a heart attack. This is dangerous. This is an emergency. Their fear triggers more nervous system activation. Their nervous system perceives the fear as confirmation that there is danger. The alarm gets louder. The heart races more. The cycle tightens. Fear leads to more activation, leads to more fear. In the second scenario, someone feels their heart racing and they remember what they have learned. This is what happens when my nervous system is in protection mode. My nervous system thinks I am in danger, but I am not in actual danger. I am sitting in my house. I am safe. My nervous system just has an old pattern. This is an old learning, not a current threat. And while they still feel the physical sensation of the racing heart, it is still uncomfortable. It is still real. They are no longer afraid of it. They are no longer treating it as a sign of emergency. The heart races, but it does not terrify them. And when the fear is removed, when the internal threat perception is reduced, the nervous system gradually settles. The difference between these two scenarios is understanding, and that understanding changes everything. Now, how do you develop this understanding? This is crucial. It is not through reading alone, though reading and learning can be part of it. Understanding develops through seeing your own experience clearly, through paying attention without judgment, through noticing patterns in your own life, through experiencing the reality of what you have been learning in these pages, in your own body, in your own life, through repetition and time. Understanding that lasts comes from lived experience, not from belief. You do not need to believe that your symptoms are not dangerous. You need to experience, again and again, that nothing bad happens when you are experiencing the symptom. You need to feel your heart race and then see that you are still okay. You need to feel dizzy and then see that you did not faint. You need to have anxiety and then see that the feared thing does not happen. These repeated experiences gradually shift how your nervous system interprets the signal, not because you have convinced yourself, but because your nervous system has received enough evidence to update its threat assessment. This is why clarity, and not technique, is where real change begins. Because when you are clear about what is actually happening, when you are clear that your symptoms are signals, not sickness, your nervous system can begin to respond differently. You are no longer in the fog of confusion, wondering if you are sick, wondering if your symptoms are warnings of hidden disease. You can see what is actually happening. A nervous system that learned to be protective and now maintains that protection even though the threat is over. And there is something almost surprising about what happens next. Once you stop trying to force change, once you stop trying to control your way to calm, once you simply understand what is happening, change actually becomes possible. Your nervous system, no longer feeling like it needs to protect you from your own understanding, no longer fighting against your attempts to control it, can actually begin to shift. Not because you have finally found the right technique, not because you have achieved some special state. It happens because the internal threat has decreased. Because your nervous system has received enough new information, enough repeated experiences of safety, enough clarity about what is actually going on, that it can begin to trust that things are not as dangerous as it thought. This shift does not happen because you have mastered a breathing exercise. It happens because the perception of threat has changed. The internal threat level has dropped. The nervous system has received a message, not through words, but through your understanding, through your non-resistance, through your acceptance, that says, you do not have to be this alert. You do not have to protect me from my own body. I understand what is happening, and I am okay. Here is where you start. Today, right now, you can begin one small shift. Not a technique, not an exercise. A shift in how you relate to your body. The next time you notice a symptom, a racing heart, shallow breathing, tension, anxiety, instead of trying to fix it, just notice it. Say to yourself, this is my nervous system in protection mode. This is an old pattern. I do not need to fight this. I do not need to control this. I can just notice it and let it be there. That is the beginning. That is the first step. You do not need to do breathing exercises. You do not need to force relaxation. You do not need to control anything. You just need to understand, and you need to notice. From there, time and consistency will do the rest. Your nervous system will gradually learn that it is safe, not because you have convinced it through force, but because you have stopped fighting it. Conclusion. Where to go from here? You have come through a significant journey in these pages. You have learned that the body reacts before your mind even has a chance to form thoughts. You have learned that breathing is not a technique to master. It is a language that your nervous system speaks. You have learned why symptoms persist, even when the external crisis has long since passed. You have learned why your nervous system stops recognizing safety after months or years of high alert. You have learned about the loss of internal awareness that happens under chronic stress. You have learned why trying to control your symptoms often makes everything worse. And most importantly, you have learned that understanding is where real change begins. Not forced change, not white-knuckle willpower, not one more technique, but the kind of shift that happens naturally when your nervous system finally stops treating your own internal sensations as a threat. But understanding something intellectually is different from living it. Knowing that your nervous system has learned a protective pattern is different from actually experiencing the shift that comes when that pattern begins to release. Knowing these things in your mind is not the same as knowing them in your body. So let me talk about what comes next. Not what you should do, not another goal to pursue, but what is possible once you have this understanding. First, it is important to know that the information in this book is the beginning, not the end. Understanding why your symptoms persist is valuable. But that understanding needs to be lived. It needs to be felt in your body, not just known in your mind. This happens through time. It happens through consistent experience. It happens through paying attention to your own life and noticing how things begin to shift as your understanding deepens. Some people, as their understanding deepens, find that gentle breathing practices become helpful, not because the techniques are powerful in themselves, but because now they are not using the techniques to force change. They are not trying to control their nervous system. They are using them as a way to gently communicate with their nervous system. When someone understands that shallow breathing is a signal of their nervous system's protective pattern, and they gently begin to slow their breathing, they are not trying to override their system. They are saying to their nervous system, "I understand. I am safe. We can ease up now." The same action, slowing the breath, but with completely different intention and completely different effect. Others find that body-based work becomes helpful. Some people find that working with a therapist who understands nervous system patterns helps them move through this faster. Some people explore gentle movement practices, yoga, tai chi, dancing, walking in nature. Some people find that spending time in nature helps their nervous system settle. Some people find support through community, through talking with others who have had similar experiences. The specific practice matters far less than the foundation of understanding underneath it. What is important is that any practice you pursue comes from a place of understanding, not fear. It comes from a place of curiosity, not desperation. It comes from a place of self-compassion, not self-blame. Any practice done with that foundation will help. Any practice done without that foundation, without understanding, without self-compassion, will likely just reinforce the old pattern. Many people find that they need support. This is not a sign of weakness. This is not a sign that you are broken or defective. This is simply recognizing that changing a deep nervous system pattern is challenging work, and it is often easier and faster with someone who understands the process. This might be a therapist. It might be a coach who specializes in nervous system work. It might be a trusted person in your life who can help you notice the shifts as they happen, who can remind you of what you have learned when you temporarily forget, who can be a witness to your experience. What is important is that any support you seek comes from someone who understands that your symptoms are not a disease to be cured. Someone who does not believe that you need to be fixed. Someone who understands that your nervous system is intelligent, that it is trying to protect you, and that the goal is not to fight that intelligence, but to gradually communicate to the system that the threat has passed. It is also important to know that this process is not linear. You will have days where you feel a genuine shift, where you notice that the racing heart does not frighten you the way it used to, where you feel a moment of genuine ease and safety. And you will also have days where the old pattern feels like it is running at full force, where you feel like nothing has changed, where you wonder if all of this understanding is real or if you have just imagined it. This is normal. This is how nervous systems change. The change is not a straight line from anxious all the time to never anxious again. The change is a gradual shift in the baseline. Days of ease become more frequent. Moments of genuine relaxation become more possible. The constant background tension begins to ease. But old patterns can reassert themselves, especially during times of stress or when you face new challenges. And when they do, It can feel like you are back to square one, but you are not back to square one, because you have understanding now. And that understanding persists, even on the difficult days. Even when the old pattern is running strong, you know what is happening. You know that your nervous system is in protection mode. You know that you are not broken. You know that this is just an old pattern, and patterns can change. And that knowing, even if everything else feels like it is falling apart, is still there. It is still real. Here is something else that is important. There is no rush. In fact, rushing is often counterproductive. Your nervous system did not learn this pattern overnight, and it will not unlearn it overnight either. The pattern was learned through months or years of consistent experience, and it will gradually ease through months or years of consistent new experience. There is no deadline. There is no point at which you need to have this fixed. There is no pressure to feel better by a certain date. I know this might feel frustrating. You want relief now. You want the symptoms to be gone. You want to feel okay. All of that is understandable. But the attempt to rush the process, the attempt to force faster change than is actually possible, often becomes the very thing that perpetuates the pattern. What if you could give yourself permission to let this unfold in its own time? What if you could trust that your nervous system knows how to change once it feels truly safe to do so? What if, instead of pushing toward a particular outcome, you could simply pay attention to the process, noticing the small shifts as they happen, feeling grateful for the moments of ease, and maintaining your understanding even on the difficult days? This is not resignation. This is not giving up. This is actually the most powerful approach there is, because it removes the secondary layer of stress, the stress about your stress, the anxiety about your anxiety. It allows the nervous system to focus its energy on actual change rather than on resisting your attempts to force it to change. Let me be very clear about something. This does not mean that understanding alone is enough. Understanding is where change begins. But genuine healing often involves other things too. It might involve working with a therapist or counselor. It might involve gentle body-based practices. It might involve changes in how you structure your life, how you rest, how you move, how you spend your time. It might involve medication for some people. It might involve treating actual medical conditions if they are present. But all of these things work better, and only work sustainably, when they are built on a foundation of understanding. When you understand what is happening, you can work with your body instead of against it. When you understand the pattern, you can make choices that support the nervous system's ability to shift, rather than choices that reinforce the pattern. When you understand that your symptoms are signals, not sickness, you can respond to them with curiosity instead of fear. Important. Medical considerations. As you move forward, remember the distinction we discussed. If you have actual medical conditions, if a doctor has diagnosed disease or dysfunction, then you need medical treatment alongside this understanding. Understanding your nervous system helps, but it does not replace medicine when medicine is needed. If you have not had a medical evaluation, get one. If you have had one and everything came back normal, then this book is for you. If you have been diagnosed with something real, then your work includes both medical treatment and this nervous system understanding. Be clear about what you have. Be honest with yourself. And be willing to get professional help, medical and psychological, when you need it. Final reflection. If you take one thing from this book, let it be this. Your body has not been working against you. It has been responding to signals for a very long time. Rapid heartbeat, restless sleep, a sense of inner alertness that never fully fades. These are not failures. They are signs of a system that learned to stay ready. Breathing played a role in that pattern. not because it was wrong, but because it became part of a signal your nervous system learned to read as urgency. Nothing needs to be forced now. Change does not begin with controlling the breath. It does not begin with fixing symptoms or chasing calm. It begins when the nervous system stops treating every internal sensation as a threat. Understanding creates that shift. When you understand why your body reacts the way it does, tension loses part of its power. When sensations stop feeling mysterious, they stop feeling dangerous. And when the body no longer expects danger from within, it slowly begins to settle. From there, many paths can open. Some people explore gentle breathing approaches that focus on slowing and easing the breath rather than controlling it. Others find support through body-based or nervous system-oriented work. For some, professional guidance becomes an important part of the process. There is no single right direction, and there is no urgency. What matters is this: you no longer need to fight your body. You no longer need to rush toward solutions, and you no longer need to interpret every sensation as a warning. Awareness is not a cure, but it is a doorway. And once you see the doorway, you are no longer trapped inside the same experience. Take your time. Your nervous system knows how to change when it no longer feels threatened. And that understanding is where it begins.